good guy that I am, I'll let Ron Nelson dry off a little bit. He is running the door. Everything is good. We need to mention the breaking story that we had at the top of this hour, which would affect a lot of people in agriculture. And that is that Chinese media reporting that it has suspended the imposition of punitive tariffs on U.S. pork imports. Again, one of the big reasons they're running out of pork. The African swine fever has ravaged the hog herd there. But the National Pork Producers will join us at 10 o'clock to tell us just how much of that is true. It was just a week ago that Mr. Ron Nelson Commercial Properties, Nelson Commercial Real Estate, said we'll talk more about it on Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th is here. Lucky Friday the 13th. And I didn't read your blog this morning. I told you we're going to have a guest here today.
I know. I did not put that in.
Okay.
So you don't have a guest?
Well, we're going to talk with the guest next week because there's
now the 20th.
other topical points to talk about. This week, didn't anticipate a tornado when we talked last week.
Now, you were kind of close to that, right? Like in the middle of it?
My office is at 41st and Kiwanis. So
that's right where they've said
ground zero. Yeah. So I don't know the difference between F2, F4, F5 tornadoes. I think the bigger numbers probably just devastate a whole area where it seems like this one has been more selective. But weird story I'll tell about my specific situation. The corner strip center with Pizza Ranch and all, that building, which we put 3 of those businesses in there, so it's especially close to us. But, that thing got devastated. So the tornado goes then across the street. There's a strip center with the Verizon right on the corner there, and our office building is literally right behind that. And
you're close to O'Gorman.
Yeah, we're right across the street from O'Gorman. And so our little office building was originally built as a leasing annex, if you will, to 2 different apartment buildings. One right next to our office building, which we own, and then this other apartment, identical, built by the same guy, back in the 70s, whatever, 2 doors down. And so our little office building is like 5 feet lower than the strip center on the corner. So the tornado devastates the Pizza Ranch Mall, the strip center, that property, Plaza 41, jumps over the strip center, doesn't really do much damage to the strip center. Our office building, like I said, is 5 feet lower. My dumpster got blown 50 feet into the back.
Was it empty?
It was, I don't know. It was impaled, the handle that, the garbage trucks grab to, dump it.
Sure.
That handle was impaled into the side of our building after being blown 50 feet. My rooftop air conditioning unit was blown over, and it was on its side on the roof, and water's rushing into our office building. Meanwhile, our apartments are 15 feet away, 30 feet higher than our office building. It jumped that building and jumped 2 buildings over to the identical apartments to ours and tore the roof completely off of that apartment building. So weird as to, what these weather patterns and tornado patterns do. It was just freakish, But, candidly, we consider ourselves lucky, and blessed. We've got another property, an apartment over near 41st and Western. In the parking lot of that building, I think this business is in kind of that hoo-hot strip center by Shields, those strip centers on the side of Shields facing Western Avenue. So probably 2.5 blocks from our apartment there. In our parking lot of the apartment was the sign face for a business called Nothing Bundt Cakes. So the sign blew 2.5 blocks into our parking lot on that property. Once again, we were blessed with very minimal damage, trees, some electrical lines down, things like that. So, my gosh, just what a tragedy, that has hit our community. And yet in tragedy, there's silver linings and, just the whole fact that injuries and certainly, no deaths that we know of yet to report. So, amazing in light of all the tough things that have happened. But what I wanted to talk about, Bill, today that is very much on the minds of businesses is something in leases that for 30 years I've been doing this business, and we go through all of the, call it, economic points of the leases. What's the rent going to be? When's it going to start? What are the conditions of this, that, or the other thing? And something you don't spend a lot of time in provisions of leases. Attorneys still make sure you do, and now we're thanking them for that. But there are provisions of addressing what happens when something like this occurs, a natural disaster. And
once in every 23-year occasion.
Well, or, whatever. I've lived here a long time, since the 70s, and first time I've ever seen or heard or lived through this. I grew up in the Omaha area, and we had a tornado in Omaha that rocked our world back in the mid 70s. But the lease provision talks about full or partial destruction of the premises. And what do you do? And sometimes, we're literally negotiating, well, if it's 30% destruction of the premises, and, sometimes people are saying, well, we'll go with 50%. And so you're negotiating, the percentage of destruction of the premises kind of with the attitude of, this is never going to happen. Why are we wasting our time talking about, something that's never going to occur? Well, that's why you do. That's why you waste your time talking about those things, because it's not a waste of time. And now, sadly, these types of provisions are coming into play. But I've seen some headlines of stories of businesses saying, oh, yeah, we are, looking for a new location, or whatever. Well, you might not have the right to do that. You need to look at your lease to make that determination. And so just a few points for those businesses that are affected.
You mentioned you had 3 businesses in the building that we were talking about. What percent did they wind up with? Was it 10%, 30%, 50%?
I don't know. I haven't really talked to them.
Would it have varied from client to client, or with the people that had the building?
It's generally referencing the building. Not specifically the business, but, what has happened to the building. And then it talks about, the time for rebuilding and so forth. And, at some point, the tenant does indeed have a say in the matter. But, there are areas that they don't have a say in the matter. And I think, at this stage, it's a little early to, rush to judgment saying, we're closing our business or we're moving or, whatever, just because, some of those things are addressed in your lease. So understand that, talk to your attorney if necessary. You can talk to us as real estate commercial professionals, but, some of these get so deep into the weeds of legalese that I don't feel comfortable always advising people on legal matters. I can certainly give you some pointers or hook you up with the right commercial attorney, but it is an important thing to study right now. And, right now people are just in shell shock mode, so it's a little hard to, look at things like that. But at some point this is going to come to roost, and you do need to understand, your rights, your obligations, and your responsibilities, as well as the landlord's.
People always think that there's a clause, or maybe there isn't a clause, what they call an act of God.
Yeah.
Was this an act of God with the fact that we had a tornado?
Well, obviously, it was. And so, like I said, in the leases, it defines, what happens in an act of God, what happens in a flood, what happens in a tornado, what happens in other types of things, earthquakes, and things like that. And like I said, it attempts to define, so if you have an earthquake, if you have a tornado and your premises are destroyed X percentage, here's what you do. And like I said, a lot of times those things, people don't spend a lot of time with them because it's like, that's theoretical risk. It's never going to happen, or, the likelihood is so remote. But to the attorneys, that we like to pick on sometimes, they focus on these things, and this is the reason why, because it does happen, and you need to have your language correctly, worded and stated for situations like this.
All right, you brought up a point that I'm going to ask in general terms.
Yeah.
And you talked about if a particular property is gone, you have to look for something else.
Yeah.
How much is out there right now that they could find something else comparable?
Well, that's a wide open question, just because, there's apartments that are, I was looking at that apartment building 2 doors down from us. And to me, a non-construction person, I'm just looking at, I'll tell you what, the back of that parking lot looked like, I say 9/11, which is odd because it was on 9/11 that it happened. But literally insulation all over the back of that apartment in quarter-sized chunks. And literally, because it was wet as well, pasted, the side of the building was pink, the parking lot was pink, all the cars were pink, and then the roof that got blown off was in the backyard of the house behind it, kind of laying in the yard and kind of on the house and on that house's roof. So, it was a freaky situation. I'm saying there's no way that thing's getting rebuilt. And then I talked to a contractor. He's like, no big deal. You just put a couple trusses on the roof, rebuild it, and, back in business. So I'm sure the answer lies somewhere in the middle. But, Advance Auto, can that be rebuilt? I would doubt it, but, who knows?
You don't know.
I did that deal, too. I did the Best Buy deal. I mean, literally, a lot of the businesses that have been affected in this stretch were transactions, that I brought to town or, that I put together. And so it touches me in a more personal way than most. And, certainly we're just, obviously our hearts go out to these businesses, Dreamers Outlet.
And the employees.
Yeah. We just put Dreamers Outlet in earlier this spring, and so that was our most recent deal in Plaza 41. And it's just heartbreaking when you see the front of their storefront and 25 feet up, there's a hole in the building, that their entire front got blown out. Pizza Ranch, the pancake place, all those. Joanne's, Tuesday morning. It's just, it's so sad.
Amazing. And then we find the handyman who is across the viaduct on the east side of town on East 10th. Nobody was even talking about in day one, and all of a sudden I'm getting pictures from Steve Swenson, the handyman, showing, look what happened to us.
And what's cool is it tends to bind this community together. I mean,
the number of people out helping yesterday.
Well, and just driving around. I mean, it would take at my 41st and Kiwanis office, I'm meeting contractors and all that, and I'll be there in 10 minutes. Make that 45 minutes, because you can't go on 41st Street because that's blocked. So, okay, we'll go on a side street. I'll turn on this side street. That one's blocked. Okay, I'll back up. And I'm driving my big pickup, too. So not the easiest thing to maneuver. But, everybody is just, no road rage out there. Nobody's like, would you move? You're blocking my path. Everybody is understanding. And, so I think this is going to just have, a binding effect on this community. Just kind of, we're all in this together. And again, just the fact that lives were, loss and injury to lives were minimized in this thing. We're just so thankful and do feel blessed in the midst of tragedy.
Ron, how do they find you?
We're Nelson Commercial Real Estate. Website's the easiest way to get all our contact information and other info, including these podcasts of our property, and that is just ncommercial.com.
We'll talk soon.
Very good. Thanks, Bill.